Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Mediation for Business annual international forum dedicated to the development of mediation in Georgia was held in Tbilisi this week, supported by USAID Rule of Law program. Details were discussed in an analytics talk show on BMG TV's Business Morning program. Welcome to the studio. And
thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Sopam, I will start with you. What is the ultimate goal of mediation to start with, and how often do businesses turn to mediation? What did this discussion that you held yesterday show?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us, first of all. Well, mediation is not as frequently used as it can in Georgia, and the primary reason for that is probably two. First is lack of awareness about all the benefits that mediation can bring and how valuable it can be as a process. And that includes, we often say that mediation is fast, it offers an opportunity for a very efficient resolution of disputes. It's also, cheaper as well, but it also has a very specific value of giving the businesses opportunity to stay in control, to basically stay in control of what will be the resolution. It's a mechanism
What do you mean under that?
So mediation is an assisted negotiation. A mediator comes to assist, to help the parties, to talk about what will be the best possible solution for their including commercial interests. So it's not about being right or wrong at law. That is what happens in arbitration or in court litigation, in adversarial proceedings. But it's more about, okay, so what have you missed to better understand each other and better understand what is it that you need as a business. It's a very solution-oriented, solution-focused, future-focused, not like blame-focused process, but it's a resolution-focused process. So mediators assist the parties to think about what is it that they want to achieve, what will be the risks if they don't settle, so what legal risks they face. So that's the primary value of mediation. Yeah.
Michael, you were the leading lawyer of General Electric, one of the giant companies. Now you are consulting other businesses how to use mediation as the tool to solve their business disputes. What is your main message? Why mediation?
The main message is that businesses want results. And you need to have available to you all of the different ways of getting results. And so mediation is an avenue that is low cost, has minimal impact on the business relationship, and often produces a result very early in a conflict. So the main message I would say is that there's really almost never any downside to trying mediation. And if your objective is to find a resolution, because what businesses want is a resolution.
If businesses want resolution, then I will be turning to what Sopa said earlier, that mediation is not that frequently used in Georgia. What are some of the barriers or challenges that you see in this direction?
I've heard this. By attending the conference, that was a wonderful conference that was organized yesterday, I heard that. I'm not surprised, because mediation is in its early stages. Your law was passed in 2019. 2020 it came into effect, and so I think it's actually being used quite a bit from what I guess in such a short time. But I would also point out that, and Sopa has written about this, is that mediation actually has long, ancient traditions in Georgia as having third parties who facilitate disputes. So it's not exactly a foreign process. It's actually a very natural process that people have used here for hundreds of years.
What happens if mediation doesn't work, and is it still worth going through all this?
Absolutely,
process?
Absolutely. Look, it's wonderful if you can reach a resolution and find a settlement, but if you don't, at least you've had an opportunity to understand what is it you really want to achieve. Maybe you don't find a resolution at the mediation, but you might find it later on. It's a moment where you can learn more about the other party and what they want to achieve. So as I said, I don't think there's ever really any downside to trying to find a resolution early. guided by a third party. And by the way, businesses, as Sopa mentioned, businesses like negotiating, and this is just a form of negotiation assisted by a third person.
Yes. Sopa, what is USAID doing to support this process? You mentioned one of the challenges that there is lack of awareness. Is this the only direction that USAID is supporting in this process?
That is not the only direction. It is one of the big directions because lack of awareness about the benefits of mediation is a major issue. So one is to raise knowledge and understanding of the benefits, including through organizing conferences like this one. But another one is also businesses like to hear from their peers. So if I, as a mediator, I say mediation is good, I'm preaching to them. They might say, of course you're saying that. But if they hear from somebody like, Mike, who comes from the business world, and if they hear from their peers who have actually tried the process and can talk about their specific experiences, then they will have more trust and credibility to try that process. So one is to create those opportunities for exchange, to learn more about the benefits of mediation. Of course, the other one is to educate lawyers to know what is their role in that process, because lawyers are the ones who advise their clients. Clients listen to their lawyers, they trust their lawyers, so lawyers need to know what the process is and what is their role in mediation. It's different than their role in court. In court, they have to persuade that their client is right. In mediation, they have to be helpful to the client to reach a resolution. So that's the other one. And we work also with the judiciary because we want to promote referral to mediation by judges. Disputes come to courts, to judges, and they refer cases to mediation. So we assist the judiciary to expand court-annexed mediation programs across the country. And of course, we work with the Mediators Association of Georgia, which is the leading organization, to ensure that there are quality mediators who will actually handle those cases and the resolutions will be reached.
Yes. So during this period when mediation was introduced to Georgia, do we already have some cases, some disputes that have been settled, and what type of businesses are kind of like appealing for mediation?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, USAID, rule of law programming, has been working on mediation since 2012. That's when the first pilot project started at City Court. And since then, there are cases that are referred, majority of cases are referred by judges. There are a few cases where business representatives come on their own, without referral of judges, but that only happens if the lawyers know what mediation is and they actually advise their clients. So there are figures, there are statistics, including at the court. The average settlement rate is also promising. It's about 60-70% of settlement rate at courts. So it's a good settlement rate, and it's just about having more more referrals, more businesses being more comfortable with the process and knowing what the process can offer them.
Michael, when you are consulting, I mean, what are some of the main points or main focuses that you are accentuating while talking with the businesses? What are some of the examples, maybe even big examples, that could that show that mediation really brings results?
One thing I think that's very useful for businesses to understand, especially small and medium-sized businesses, is to include a mediation requirement in their contracts, particularly when they do international contracts. And I'll explain why. A small company that does a contract, say, for delivering goods or services, or working with a company in France or the United States or in other parts of Asia, if there's a dispute, it could be for them, it could be a very difficult thing to try to resolve, to hire lawyers in foreign countries, to try to resolve it through courts of other countries or arbitration. If they have a mediation requirement, then there's a higher chance that they'll be able to resolve it through amicable negotiations at a relatively low cost. So one thing I would say to businesses that never have tried mediation, I'd say, well, think about using it as a way to help you engage to make it easier for you to engage in international business, so you don't have have to worry as much about the possible costs of conflict. And then one other thing that I always say to our clients, when I used to say to my business leaders when I was working in Baker Hughes and General Electric, was that whenever you go to a major negotiation or a mediation, always keep 3 numbers in mind. And the first number is, what is your objective? What do you want to achieve as a business? And that could be, it could be a number that you can settle on. It might also be new business that you might be able to have with the other side. But have a clear objective. And that's very difficult for businesses when they have a conflict to think of, what would we want to resolve this one if we could resolve it for? The second number is what would be your offer that you would make? It may not be your objective, but that's part of your strategy. How do you get to your objective? And the third number is, what is something that you would accept that maybe isn't your objective, but it's better than spending time in courts or in arbitration? So that's the simple advice that I try to give to businesses, to help them think about how to use mediation in a way that benefits them.
You mentioned several times relatively low cost.
Yes.
Is this the cost that, for example, small and medium businesses could also handle, and relative to what?
Absolutely. Consider that, for example, an international mediation would typically only take 1 day. So you're talking about 1 day of time. The cost really for mediation is the cost of preparing. This is something business people understand, is that you don't go to a negotiation without having really prepared yourself. So there is some investment in preparing to attend a mediation, but that's a cost that you're going to have in any event if you have a dispute, right? If you go to court, or if you go to arbitration, you're going to have to prepare at some point. So it's not a question of adding costs as much as making sure you have those costs more at the beginning so you can get a better solution.
Sopa, what did the conference show? I mean, because there was this discussion also about mediation. Do businesses want to know more? Do they have questions? And also, what are some of the examples or some of the role models, so to say, that they could adhere to or relate to in our environment?
Right. So one of the purposes of those conferences today and yesterday was to share as much as to learn what is the need of businesses, or if they, what are their perceptions about mediation? Why would they not go, or what would it take for them to try mediation? So it's also for us to understand more where they are coming from, where businesses are coming from, but also to share more from our perspective, like the experiences of users, of those who've tried mediation. So there are some very interesting questions that our program has tried to identify throughout this process. So one of the frequent questions that businesses raise is, so why should I try to mediate? I've already tried to negotiate. So I've tried to negotiate. So why do I need a third person to? And sometimes they might perceive it, and that's not only in Georgia. Actually, a study in Queen Mary University showed that across Europe that's the same. So sometimes they perceive that trying mediation reflects bad on them, because it might look as they were not able to handle that problem themselves. So we're trying to shift that mindset, showing that doctors don't operate on themselves. They call other doctors to do that, right? So if you have a problem, as good a negotiator you might be, you are embedded in the dispute. The other party will perceive you as an adversary. They're not going to listen. Mediator comes from the neutral mindset, not embedded, and so it's very helpful to have that neutral, skilled person to work with the parties, to help them assess the risk, to help them talk about interests and find solutions that will match their interests. So we're trying to convey this message throughout these conferences these days.
Yeah. So it's more trying to have like a win-win solution rather than win-lose.
It's
solution,
absolutely
right?
so. And the main message is also that businesses don't have to settle. So that's part of it. Yeah. What might sound like you don't lose anything. There's no way you can lose in mediation. Yeah. You go, you give it a try, you become more prepared. And the best that can happen, you find a resolution, which might be very different and open new perspectives, or might be okay.
But if you don't, you're no worse off than you didn't try mediation.
Exactly. So you don't have to. If it doesn't go, you can always say, well, we have tried, and that's it. We know more about the dispute now. And that's it. So there's no way you can lose. And,
which can also help us if we go to the court.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Yes. So Michael, to zoom out a little bit and to look at the bigger picture, how could usage of mediation or utilizing this opportunity affect the overall business environment, the overall investment environment? Because I mentioned several cases that we have, for example, in international arbitration courts against Georgia. Could using more mediation and thinking more what you want to get out of the process ultimately help improve to some extent business and investment?
I think your question answers itself. Absolutely. And again, there's no downside to attempting to do this. And if look, if you have if you try it 3 times and you only have 1 success, that's 1 success.
Which is not bad.
Which is not bad. And maybe you'll have 2 or 3 successes. You don't know unless you try.
That's really nice. Thank you so much for being with us and taking our questions.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.